Welcome back to Psychology of Peace Building. I would like to now introduce to you one of my own models. As you read through the Holding These Truths case studies, you will see that I have a lifelong expertise career in working with violent conflict. Not like a police officer, security guard, but as a peace builder, as a mediator, and also the leader of a treatment team for repeat violent offenders, all girls ages 10 to 17, who had been abused in all the ways you can imagine, horrible, the lives they had led. But this model focuses on escalating, destructive, potentially violent conflict. And I will be returning to it again and again throughout your course because there's a lot of material that helps explain the triggering of conflict, which is what we'll focus on today, what starts a conflict, how we frame this is a conflict, right? The escalation, the increase, what we do as human beings that makes it worse, and what might lead to some kind of violence, whether it's physical, verbal, emotional. We're covering all different forms here. Today, as I said, we're going to look at triggers. So let me go to the trigger portion of this model. There is a lot of material here, so bear with me. You can always stop me after 5 minutes and come back. You'll be reading about all of this in your material. We'll get a lot of chance to review. As I said, a trigger in this course is what starts a conflict. Now, actually, what starts a conflict is our framing. I have introduced framing and reframing last week. It's what our head does, how we judge this is a conflict. And different cultures are going to frame conflict in incredibly different ways. I once had a New Yorker student, born and raised in New York City, very bright man, an Italian-American engineer. And after my class, which was out west, I was actually teaching in Colorado at the time, but my class had been talking about a class conflict. A light bulb went on in his head and he went, oh my goodness, where I grew up, you don't say it's a conflict unless somebody hits somebody. So that's actually the peak of this model. The very top is where there's physical violence, verbal violence, emotional violence. We're not going there today. This was only my one student. Most of us identify and frame conflict without physical violence, right? There's just some kind of tension, misunderstanding, somebody looks at us rudely. Let me talk about some of the research around this. Now, triggers are, when you're looking at this model, this curve, it's when you're just starting to move up, right? So the first thing I want to talk about is frustration aggression theory. Frustration aggression theory, and this comes out of Freud's work with the id, our primitive self, our childlike impulsive self. Frustration aggression theory says that whenever we get frustrated, we start a conflict. Now, wouldn't this world be horrible if that actually was true? In my experience working with most adults, all of my students and people around the world, most of us have learned some level of controlling our impulses and managing our frustration so we don't become aggressive. But I'll tell you, with the recent heat of climate change taking me outside my comfort zone, I'm a Nordic, heritage person who does better with cold than heat. When I'm tired, yeah, I might be a little bit more irritated when I get frustrated with something. So it's worth looking at, okay, is frustration aggression theory, does it explain this particular conflict? It might. More likely, It's stress. And I'm going to share today a little bit of the stress research as it relates to conflict and aggression. It also is highly linked with self-care. So, the way I don't, get frustrated and irritated and pick a fight with my husband when it's hot and I'm tired is I take care of myself, right? I cool off, I take a walk, I get perspective, I meditate, I pray. I don't know what you do. I hydrate, right? I go for a swim, whatever it's going to take for me to take good care of myself. That is what stress research demonstrates as well. And it's important for you to understand this as a student because most of you working like I did to put yourself through undergrad, some of you with children, my God, I don't know how you do it, especially if you're working full time. It seems impossible to me. I only worked and went to school for my undergrad. But you're feeling stress. You're not always able, if you're going out and partying with your friends, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, you're not always able to get a good night's sleep or take good care of yourself, right? So what does stress research show? Well, when we're not taking good care of ourselves, we get too tired, or maybe we haven't eaten what we should have eaten, right? We didn't, whatever. We're likely to be more irritable, edgy. We all know this place. We've all been under stress. We're seeing it in our traffic and driving. Oh my goodness. Although that's the next level of stress research. If we're just not taking very good care of ourselves, we might be more likely to pick a fight with a friend or a loved one just because we're edgy, right? So that would start a conflict. The next level is much more serious when it comes to violent conflict. It's when we neglect self-care for an extended period of time. And the next stage is the stage of burnout, because stress research is actually studying our bodies, our biology, how our bodies, our mind and body are doing under stress. And we literally are capable of burning out our adrenal glands, of harming our immune system. And at that point, we're not just irritated with people. At that point, you're seeing rage. You're seeing people lose it. You're seeing meltdowns, right? And I've been teaching this ever since road rage began. And I've had some driver chase me in a car in Colorado. Fortunately, we never talked. We never had personal contact. We built peace by leaving each other alone, but he obviously lost it. And I still don't know what was going on with this guy. If you get to the level of burnout, you're going to know it because you will not have the energy you need to go to school, to work, to take care of your children. And you're going to be losing your temper a lot. Hopefully none of you will ever get to that point, because the next stage is the stage of disease, where people get sick, really sick. Your risk for cancer and other illnesses go up if you deplete your body mind. No question about that. And self-harm, the risk of, feeling suicidal and wanting to hurt yourself and others also goes up. So that's the stress research around triggering conflict. It's a lot, right? Today I have a lot to give you because I want you to understand the basics. Another model I want to talk about is Dr. Kubler-Ross's model of death and dying. She was a doctor who studied dying people, and she saw the grieving process of the person who knew they were dying and also their loved ones, the family around them. The reason I want to share this model with you is it's relevant to a lot of intimate relationships, whether parent-child, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Um, Normally, when it comes to grief, most of us don't want to accept it. It's like what we're seeing with climate change. A lot of people are like, oh no, this is not happening. And we saw it with COVID as well. People saying this is a lie, this is false news information when it was true. They just denied it. And that's one of the things human beings, we put our head in the sand and we ignore the truth, we ignore reality, the warning signs. At some point though, if you're grieving something that cannot be changed, I'm currently grieving how we've destabilized this beautiful planet, and including California, which is like a paradise, makes me very sad. At some point, we're like, okay, maybe I can change this if I do something differently. So we bargain, right? We're like, okay, I'm going to be a better human being. If I just go to church more or I'm kind to people more, maybe climate change will go away, right? This is another way of denying what's going on, but people do it. You know, you're breaking up with a girlfriend, boyfriend, you're like, oh, maybe if I do this or that, they'll stay with me. So you're trying to negotiate and bargain. And finally, when that does not work, what most people feel is anger and even rage, because they don't want life to be changing. They don't want to be losing the loved ones, right? We see a lot of intimate partner violence because this rage erupts. The same thing happens if somebody's been fired and has lost their job. In fact, we even see psychotic breaks with the violence erupting. So rage and anger are normal parts of grieving. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It means you're a healthy human being who's struggling with a loss, right? And only after feeling that anger and rage do human beings arrive at sadness. And finally, surrendering into acceptance of what's going on. The reason I'm sharing this as a trigger of conflict is we don't often know what's going on with the person we have conflict with unless we're in an intimate, close, open relationship. So it's good to ask yourself, what's going on with this person? What do I need to understand? And the last thing I want to talk about today with this model is some research that was introduced to me when I was first asked to teach at the University of Denver in the Graduate School of Social Work. I was asked to take over the course that one of the social work professors had created on managing the angry and dangerous client. Now, really, in the world today, we need everyone you know to be taking this course and other courses like it, because we're just so ill-equipped. We've seen such an increase in danger and violence, very sad. But let me share with you the research on how those who had physically assaulted, hit someone, shot someone. I don't think we did research on somebody shooting someone. Let's just stick with physical assault. How they perceived their victim, because it's important to put yourself in the other person's shoes and try to see the world through their eyes. And what these abusive, violent people reported is that they had experienced the other person as starting the conflict. So they saw themselves as victims. They didn't see themselves as the perpetrator. And how the other person started the conflict? Well, obviously, if they insulted or criticized them, put them down, that would start a conflict, right? But cold disinterest, lack of interest in that person as a human being, also started conflict. So I'm sharing this with you because we need to be very aware of how others are experiencing and perceiving us if we want to be peace builders. Okay, well, we'll be coming back to this model a lot. enough for today.